you cannot really play that game. But in cloud computing, the service works on demand. So when you let know that you need some resources, so you get your resources available right away. So next comes availability. Suppose you have got your computer and you have got many things in your computer actually, like the databases and many more things. If your computer is not connected to the internet, you cannot access it from different places, right? But in cloud computing, there's no problem with availability, because after you upload your things into the cloud, and cloud services like Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, or Google Cloud Platform, you got to use these things from all over the world using LAN, WAN, or any appropriate network. Then comes resource pooling. So when we buy a computer, like it has got 4 gigabytes or 8 gigabytes of RAM, we don't use the whole RAM all the time, right? We may be utilizing 5% or 10 to 15% of the facilities at max. But in cloud computing, a system is built in the cloud and you get to use the most of that part, and you are also sharing the resources with other people. Definitely there is security and privacy things in respect, but you don't need to worry about like your things are being used by someone else. But what it offers is that the same hardware and cloud architecture is being used for providing different services. So resource pooling comes very necessary and helpful here. And next comes the most exciting part of cloud computing. There are two words you see: elasticity and scalability. Well, in scalability, it says when you need some more resources, sometimes it might occur like you're running a e-commerce website. You got your regular customers, but sometimes it might occur like you give discount on one of your products, 70 or 80% discount. So you can expect a huge rush of customers to your e-commerce website, right? So it would require huge resources. So at that time, uh, when you use cloud computing instead of traditional computing, the system gets scaled up automatically to meet your demand. And when the demand is over, it has elasticity. That means it will revert back to the previous plan automatically. So you don't really need to worry about like if you are running out of your resources or not, or if your system is going to crash due to heavy demand of resources, etc. And the last part I have already said, that is pay as you go. That means you really don't need to worry about the extra things consumed. Like if you buy a traditional computer, or if you go for server architecture that you build in your own organization or in a startup, you have to pay for the whole thing, and whether you use it or not, you have to like buy all the stuff. So that increases your capital expenditure or capex. But in cloud computing, as you pay for the things you consume and pay for the time you use those services, so it actually converts that capital expenditure into operational expenditure. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. So from the earlier discussion, we have understood that the cloud computing has multiple benefits over traditional computing. So what has made cloud computing most popular in these days? The first and important one is savings in cost, because it is turning capital expenditure into operational expenditure. Let me explain what is capital expenditure. Suppose you need a computer and you buy a computer. So you use that computer 5 hours a day, and most of the time it remains unused. So you are still paying for that thing even if you don't use it. But cloud computing says you don't need to pay for the time you don't use those services. So it only charges you for the time your services and system remains operational. Nothing, no payment is needed for the capital part. And there is no frequent upgrades needed as explained, because it has got elasticity and scalability features. So when you meet a demand or a rush in your app or services or anything you offer, the system just gets scaled up to the next level, and when the demand is over, the system will come back to the previous plan. So that also explains the next part, that is global scaling up to meet the demands. And elasticity allows you to, I mean, cut the cost, so you don't really have to worry a lot about the payments. So there is also another important aspect of cloud computing, that is performance. So cloud computing is actually performed using establishing data centers in different regions of the world. So in scenarios like Bangladesh or Pakistan, there are nearby data centers. Like we got one at Singapore or at India. So our system, when we buy or use cloud computing features, it will connect us to the nearest data center. So that reduces the latency or the time gap between our operations. Next, we can see greater economies of scale. That is a thing to consider. Economies of scale means when a business or startup or organization works at a large scale, so it can offer a very good discount for its consumers. So this benefit is what we get in cloud computing. So in traditional computing, when we need to buy a server or a big system, we have to spend a lot. But same kind of speed, same kind of features we can get in cloud computing for a very low cost. So this is the reason why we get so many things in cloud computing for a low price, and why it's cheap and how it's possible in so low price. So there's also speed facilities. That means the amount of money you are paying. In traditional computing, you are just responsible for the system built up at your own place. But if you give that money to cloud computing service providers, uh, more you'll get a more configured system. So that will work over internet. So it will have more configurations, like it will have more RAMs and resources. So it can offer more for your company or startup, and it has got flexibility like elasticity and scalability type of things. So next comes productivity. This is an important aspect. When we build a server at our own place, we have to buy the components like hard disk drives, routers, switches, and everything. We have to buy those things, then install those things, and then configure those things to work well with our startup or organization, or to meet our demand and distribute the things we are actually thinking up to provide as a service. But when we do it in cloud computing, we don't need to worry much about the infrastructure. So it reduces the time required and also the manual labor required in doing racking and stacking. Also, it reduces lower maintenance, because if you have a server at your own place, you will see that you have to continuously check if the components are working properly or not, if the hard drives are working or dying or failing or not. You have to look for the symptoms every now and then. But cloud computing eliminates this problem. Then comes reliability. Imagine one case: you buy a pen drive, you keep your files in that pen drive, and somehow you lose that pen drive, or the pen drive gets corrupted. What will happen? All your files will get lost, right? But in cloud computing, when you upload your stuff and your app, services, data, whatever into the cloud system, so it will get backed up. So there is nothing such as failing in cloud computing, as you can understand, because it's using multiple data centers to copy and mirror your files. So even if one data center fails, it never happens, but let's say one data center has totally collapsed, so you will get your files from another data center, and it will get copied to your nearby data center very fast, so you will really see no difference in, and your files will never get lost. That's the most security and safer part of cloud computing. All right, so let's meet the top three cloud computing service providers. That is Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, and Google Cloud Platform. So there are some other providers like IBM Cloud, SAP, VMware, Alibaba Cloud, and Oracle. So all these providers kind of provide the same things, like they provide the services to host and distribute, test and deploy your app services, storage features, networking features, databases, etc. But uh, the difference comes in their priority. Like Microsoft Azure is maybe prioritizing security, Amazon may be giving priority to storage, and Google Cloud may be giving priority to some other things. So the change is in the priority providers give up to you. All right, so let's see the cloud deployment models. So when we thought that we are going to deploy our things in a cloud computing system. So we have to decide whether we are going to use public cloud or private cloud or a hybrid cloud. So public cloud is like uh, it's provided by a it's provided by something a cloud provider, Azure or Amazon, whatever be it. So it's accessible from all over the place, and you get to manage and access these things using a web browser. So there is nothing such as organization related. It can be accessible from all over the world. Then comes private cloud. This is actually the cloud computing system based on companies and organizations, because these things are not accessible from the whole world, but the employees and the
Asif, I can hear you.
hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you
Okay,
now.
all right, I'm continuing. So when you choose a hybrid cloud, so you get some part of your data and apps and services in the private cloud system, and you get some of your uh, data in the public cloud. So what it offers is that, suppose you have the e-commerce website. So it has got many confidential things and many more internal systems. So you keep that in a private cloud. But suppose when you are facing a rush, or suppose you have a you are running a university or an organization which has some kind of result publication. So you keep all your internal stuff into the private cloud, and when you face a demand of resources, like when you publish a result, so it usually requires a lot of resources, because many people starts visiting your e-commerce website or your university website or your organization website for anything like result publication or recruitment notices, etc. So to meet with those things, you can make use of hybrid cloud. So your hybrid cloud part actually meets that certain demand and certain spike of resources needed. So your data are safe, and on the other hand, the data which needs to be publicly visible, you can keep that in hybrid cloud part. So all your data gets uh, saved, and the public facing part is also gets accessible, so you don't need to worry about your system getting crashed, like we see sometimes in government websites that they are not using any cloud model, so they are just using their on-premises server, and whenever any notice comes down or any result gets published, so their website just collapses. So if they start using and adopting to the hybrid cloud model, they will uh, safeguard themselves from this problem. Like they can keep everything into the private cloud model, and only the things that needs to be public facing, they can make that accessible using the hybrid cloud model. So their private data is safe, and at the same time, their public data is also accessible by lots of people, and the demand doesn't really impact the performance, because cloud computing provides scalability. So if the demand is huge, the system will get scaled up. And if the demand, after the demand gets over, so system will get back to the previous condition due to automatic elasticity. So these are our cloud computing deployment models. So next comes a slide that will help you better understand which one to choose when. So this is the chart. I have taken it from the internet that actually gives you a short comparison between three cloud computing models. So you can also take a snapshot of this slide to understand better when to use which cloud computing models, and when you actually need public cloud or when you need private cloud systems, and which cases are ideal for hybrid cloud system. And as we can see in the hybrid cloud, you can see the third point. It says helps maintain tighter controls over sensitive data and processes. So as I have said that if you get your private and sensitive or confidential data, so you can keep that into the private cloud system, and also you can uh, keep the public things visible. Both work are done at the same time using hybrid cloud model. All right. So next comes cloud computing services. When we talk about an on-premises server, we are actually talking about the whole thing. Like you have to buy the components, install the components, configure the components, then do whatever you want to do with the system. But in cloud computing services, you really don't need to go through all this hassle every other time. So you can take three services. The first one is infrastructure as a services. So you can consider this as similar to the on-premises server, but it has some reduced racking and stacking. Then comes platform as a service. Uh, you can you can imagine it as a system that is already prepared up, but you will decide what platform is it going to use. Like, is it going to use Windows, or will it use Linux or Red Hat or CentOS? You can decide the platform, but the underlying infrastructure, you don't need to worry about that. That underlying infrastructure is managed by the provider. And third comes software as a service. When we avail this cloud computing service like SaaS, software as a service, the platform is
I can't hear you, Asif. Asif, can you
okay.
hear
Ahmad,
me?
can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes. Okay. So I'm continuing. Okay. So as I was saying, when you take software as a service, so you get everything prepared up and installed. So you just take up the service, deploy your apps and services, then test if that works or not. If your system or the solution that you plan to offer, if that's working, so your test is done, you can start distributing your service immediately. And if your system doesn't work well with the cloud computing things, after you take the software as a service solution, so you get also debugging tools to prepare up your solution to work with the cloud computing things you use. So let's see the next slide. Okay, so I have tried to give you an overview in this slide so you can understand what we are getting in which step of the cloud computing. Like if you take infrastructure as a service, you get to configure the infrastructure, like how much storage, like what kind of network capacity are you taking. It's in your hand. This is not provided by the or maintained or scaled by the service provider. But when you take platform as a service, you get the infrastructure already prepared up. You just start setting up your system from the platform part like Windows or Linux. And when you take software as a service, your system is already set up and prepared up till platform. Like whether be it Windows or Linux or CentOS, it's already prepared up. You just open up your system, deploy your apps or services, test it, and start distributing immediately. So we can understand this thing better in the, like it says management responsibilities. Okay, so this gives us a clear comparison between what a traditional on-premises server gives to us and what we can get in cloud computing services. Like on the leftmost column, we can see that if we buy an on-premises server, we have to buy the components for networking, storage, servers, virtualization, etc. Then we have to install and configure those things to work well. Then we have to install the operating system and all those things up to applications. So this requires a lot of time. It requires a lot of manual labor, and it also requires a huge amount of time in racking and stacking. So it reduces our productivity. But when you take cloud computing services, that means the three columns in right hand. So we can see there are three structures and three solutions you can take: infrastructure as a service, IaaS, platform as a service, and software as a service. So if you take infrastructure as a service, so in your cloud computing system, the networking, storage, servers, and virtualization, these four parts will be pre-set up and it will be managed by the provider you choose, like Microsoft Azure or Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud. So you just have to prepare and set up the things from OS to applications, and then you can start doing all your works. When you take platform as a service, so you get everything set up and prepared up till from networking till runtime. So you worry about the applications and data only. And but when you take software as a service, you get everything set up and prepared up. So you just get into your system, deploy your apps or services, whatever you want, test it. If that works, you start distributing immediately. And if it doesn't work, you got the debugging tools as well, so you can get it to a working condition very soon. So it offers your startup or your organization to offer your services very quickly and release your products to market very soon, because it reduces your time required in setting up and installing and configuring the server stuff. So we are actually eliminating the hardware infrastructure here using cloud computing. So you don't need to buy the components, worry about what components are you trying to get and the difficult configurations and everything that is stopping you from quickly launching your product into the market. Okay, so let's move on. There comes an amazing topic, that is containers. So before starting that, I would like to ask the attendees to leave their questions if they have any into the chat conversation. So after I finish this half of this presentation, I will take their questions and answer them. So let's see what is containers. I would like you to imagine that there is some kind of a box and you got some things to offer to your consumers. So you keep that apps or services, whatever, in that box, and that box is what gets circulated and gets started and distributed among your consumers. So let's say you want to run Microsoft Word or any other apps in your computer. So what would you do? You turn up your computer. Your computer will turn up an operating system, and after logging into your operating system, you can fire up that particular app or service you want to run. So that requires a lot of time, and it also includes a few steps that increases the time. But in cloud computing, it offers containers. So you can keep all your things in a container, and it's lightweight, easy to deploy, and it offers you cross-platform benefits. So when you want to run an app or service, you just turn on that container and your app or service starts immediately. So this is what is being offered by containers. So it's quite ideal for cloud computing models, because suppose you're using Microsoft Azure and sometimes you plan to go to Google Cloud Platform or Amazon Web Services. So you just take your container from one platform and deploy it in another platform. No worries, your container will work fine. Okay, so there comes the benefits of container-based architecture is that as it is not dependent on any app or any language or any platform, so you can keep your container in cloud computing platforms, you can keep your container in the on-premises servers. It can be using any app or any language, so you really don't need to worry about like your app or service is going to use in this place or that place or not. What is working in Windows platform, and you can get it to working in Linux platform as well. So change of platform, change of language, change of apps, and change of place, these things really doesn't matter in cloud computing due to the cloud container based architecture. So let's see how that works. Storage architecture is that in cloud computing, we say that the hardware and the operating system is already prepared up. The kernel is already prepared up. You just need to keep your apps and services in some particular container and you can start using it right away. And when you plan to move the services and use it somewhere else, you can just pick up your container and deploy it somewhere else and it will start working immediately. So you don't have to worry about the finding compatibility in operating system or kernel or hardware, etc. So it actually reduces time and increases your productivity to a great extent. So next comes serverless computing, and it's the last topic of my part. So serverless computing. We have talked about servers in this segment a lot, like hardware infrastructure, servers and components, etc. all the time. So in a cloud computing, we have eliminated the need of hardware-based architecture or hardware components. So we have also introduced resource pooling, auto elasticity and scalability of resources, which increase the productivity, and it also offered better utilization and faster delivery of products and services, etc. to the market. So serverless computing is the thing which has made it possible. Like, there is no server actually, so there is no hardware component, so you got to manage nothing, and the scalability, maintenance, provisions, etc. are managed by the cloud computing provider like Microsoft Azure or Amazon Web Services, etc. Whatever service provider you choose, they are going to manage the whole system for you. You just think and you just think about the apps and service you are going to offer, so you get more time to focus on your product or the thing you are going to provide. So there is no infrastructure management and scalability. As said, it has elasticity features as well, so the demand of resources, you don't need to think about that. Like, if you had an on-premises server that has, let's say, 40 gigabyte of storage, for any moment, suppose there is a spike of resources, demand of resources, so you need 60 gigabyte of storage, so you have to buy another 40 gigabyte of storage and install it and then configure it in on-premises server. But in cloud computing, no necessity of that. It gets automatically scaled up to meet that demand. And the products, definitely you get to launch them faster into the market because it has increased your productivity and decreased the manual labor, decreased the time in racking and stacking. You are not thinking about the infrastructure, whether it's all right or not. So yeah, you get more time to focus on your product to and for development. Then comes more efficient use of resources. That means all your resources are being used and you only pay for the things you use. So that's actually beneficial for the developers, that are those people who are going to develop apps and services, etc. So they are not thinking about servers and infrastructure these days anymore. It is managed by the provider. So they just think and focus onto the services they offer, like mobile app development or web app development, app services, whatever be it. They have more time to focus into their product instead of worrying about their infrastructure all the time. Like, if the power supply or if the hard drive is getting old or not, or if the redundancy is working or not, cooling system, etc. There is no need to worry about all those things. So this was the last topic of my part. So let's get a recap. Well, so in cloud computing, we have seen all those special facilities that we are getting over traditional computing, like the cost effectiveness. We are getting a robust speed and performance. Cloud computing is offering us 24/7 availability, elasticity, and scalability to meet the sudden demands. It is also offering us security and reliability because our data, we can we can actually never lose our data after we put it into the cloud computing services. Then we have seen the deployment models such as public cloud, private cloud, and hybrid cloud, and also we have learned where we are going to use what. And then comes cloud computing service, where exactly we got to learn that why most of the people are shifting from traditional computing to cloud computing, because not everybody needs to manage all those things. And even if you are a web development service provider or an app service provider, there is no need for you to manage those infrastructure and hardware. So you can reduce all your time and you can better use and implement your energy in developing your apps, services, and products. So there, so this thing we saw in cloud computing services, and then we learned about containers and serverless architecture, which has actually made this possible for us in cloud computing to like shift from one place to another place and not to worry much about the compatibility. So whatever you build, you just deploy it, and you are already sure of that thing that it's compatible everywhere. You don't need to worry about the platform mismatch or the hardware things or the demand of resources or whether the resources are able to host and distribute your services and products. So that's all for my part. Next, so let's see coming up next. All these things I have discussed, these were the basics of cloud computing, but I didn't show you anything practical. So I have my friend with me, Ahmed Sheikh. He's going to come up with Microsoft Azure and all those things, and he will present you the practical aspects of these things. So next, he also gonna give you some introduction to Microsoft Learn. It's a website and platform provided by Microsoft where you can learn more about the Microsoft services and products given up. And lastly, his session will be followed up with an interactive question answer session where I'll be also available. So you can ask any of your questions in that part regarding to the session, regarding Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors Program, anything related to technology. We'll try our best to answer your questions. So Ahmad, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, so I'm thanking all the attendees and participants for being present in this segment of my presentation. So next, there is coming a segment on Microsoft Azure that's going to be spoken by my friend Ahmed Sheikh from National University of Science and Technology. And yeah, that's all for now. And just to remind you that all of you people who have registered, so you will get your event certificates within 2 working days. And yeah, so we'll have a, okay, some are asking me like, what is the attendance link? So don't worry about the attendance link. We'll just pick your names. Not a big deal here. Okay, so we are having a 5-minute break right now. So if you have any question, you can just ask in that chat conversation. I will answer those questions. And after that, my friend will start his portion. All right, so let's check out the chat conversation part. All right, so I got one question from Rizwanul Haq. He says, how much data can I store in cloud? Is there any limit? Okay, so it depends on the cloud computing service provider and also depends on the plan you are taking. So if you are a student, Microsoft gives you an option to get a student account for free, which has $100 credit limit. So you can avail those things using, there's actually a combination of things. So you can increase in data or you can increase in different resources, etc. So in that case, you are going to you are going a lot of data in that free account. But when you go for paid account, you get many plans, and definitely it's going to cost some money. Okay, so Iftu has asked me one question. Can you please briefly explain the billing of Microsoft Azure? Okay, so that's coming up into the next portion, and it will be briefly explained by my friend Ahmed Sheikh, right? Ahmed, are you here?
Yes, I am here, but I will be will not be explaining about the billing. I will be
Okay,
explaining about the Azure mostly.
all right. Okay, I have got another question. So after taking this question, I'm going to leave the floor to you and you can start then, Ahmad. All right. So let's take this question. Okay, this person hasn't given any name. So the question is, elaborate on how is speed a benefit in cloud computing compared to traditional computing. Okay, so okay, the question is, okay, her name is Veronica. Okay, so thank you very much for your question. The answer is that when you go for a traditional computing system, you have to buy a lot of hardware and you have to like worry much about what the components are getting and getting installed and configured, etc. But if you spend this much of money in cloud computing, you'll see that the cloud computing service providers are giving you a vast amount of resources, computing resources along with the storage and networking capabilities. So that's how the speed is getting high in cloud computing models, because cloud computing service providers gives you a greater economies of scale. That means as they are working at a larger scale, they are working with a lot of data places and data centers to keep your data stored. So they can cut down on the taxes. They will get better benefits from the government. So they will have a lot of discounts. So when they get this discount, they are also distributing these discounts onto their consumers. So the consumers can also enjoy all this speed, all those resources at a lower cost. So in that contrast of cost, so you can say that the amount of money you are spending on a traditional computing, you'll get that. If you put that in cloud computing, you are getting a lot more than that. So that's how speed is a benefit in cloud computing compared to traditional computing. I hope that answers your query. Okay, so Ahmad Sheikh. Yeah,
Okay.
welcome.
Should I start
Okay,
now?
Ahmad, you can start now. Yes, I am stopping my screen sharing.
Okay. So Asif, are my slides visible?
Uh, yes, it's visible and you're audible as well.
Okay. Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Ahmed Bilal and I am from National University of Science and Technology, Islamabad. I am doing software engineering there. I am also a Alpha student ambassador. These are some of my interests and these are some of my social media links. You can contact me later. If you want, you can get the snapshot of it. So without further ado, I will be starting about my session. So here are the topics that I will be discussing in this session. Okay. First of all, I would tell you how you can set up your Azure free account. So if you are a university student, as most of you are, you can get a free Azure account without any credit card. You can directly visit this website. This is azuremicrosoft.com /free/students. You have to provide them with your email with the domain name with edu.pk that is provided by your university. You can get the free account by verifying your phone and all that, and you will be also be getting some benefit, like you wouldn't need any credit card. You would get $100 Azure credits to explore Azure services, and 25 plus always free services provided by Microsoft Azure. You can also upgrade, and then you have to pay, and you have to add the credit card, and you have to pay for the upgradation of the services. So as my friend Asif has described about the basics of cloud computing, that is related to all of the cloud platform like Google and Azure and AWS, but I would be mainly discussing about the Azure. So what is Azure? Azure is one of the cloud computing services created by Microsoft. In this, you can build your app, deploy and manage application and services through a global network of Microsoft managed data centers. So the main thing that differentiates Azure is that it uses the concept of virtualization. You can uh, 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 create your own virtual machine using an abstract layer called hypervisor. Yeah, you can create an virtual machine with any number of CPUs and the databases according to your requirement. The software you will be using will you will decide on the software you will be deploying and implementing, that which virtual machine you can use. So I would also be showing you about how you can deploy a virtual machine. So this is the Azure interface. I would be logging into my account and show you various Microsoft Azure services. So I have already logged in. So Asif, is my Google Chrome screen visible?
Yes, it's visible. Please
Okay.
continue.
These are some of the services provided by the Microsoft Azure. Depending on the software you are trying to build, you can choose any of the services. So if you are a Linux user and you want to use command line instead of this GUI, you can also can write command and use the Microsoft services. And on deploying any service, you will be getting the error messages in the notification panel, and you can change the interface as you want, like you can change it to dark mode or anything you want interactive. Then there's help and support section. If you are feeling any kind of difficulty or in deploying or setting up the Microsoft Azure, you can contact the help and support team of the Microsoft. They are very willing to help, and they would contact you in 24 hours. And if you want, there are many services are provided by the Microsoft
Okay,
Azure, but
Ahmad,
if
sorry to interrupt. Can you
okay,
please zoom it out a bit?
zoom it out,
I mean, zoom in.
zoom in. Okay,
The letters are small.
okay,
Veronica has said that, if I'm not wrong.
okay. Is it visible now?
Yeah, quite comfortable. Okay.
Okay. You can send them feedback, like if you want some new services for Microsoft to be implemented, you can send them feedback, and they are very responsive, and they would soon implement that service if you request it. Then I will show you how you can create on your own virtual machine. So first you have to add a virtual machine. Let's wait. Okay, here you can add your name the virtual machine as you want. And there is the region which I would be discussing about in the later session. How can you use the region? The best preferred region is the region which is close to your country. So there would be low latency rate and high bandwidth and high connectivity. They recommend these data center, but the nearest region to or is India. If you choose India, and there would be low latency and high bandwidth. So I would be using the default one, and there is that availability option which I would be discussing in the later slide. And there is the operating system you want to implement. There are many of them. I would be implementing the Ubuntu server. And there is the virtual machine size that matters the most, depending upon your uh, subscription, and depending upon what you want. Like in this, you would get 2 virtual CPUs and 8 GB of memories. These are the standard size, but you can choose any of you want. There would be service charges that would be at the end of this column. And there are many sizes available. You can choose any one you want. So I will be choosing the one as for the demonstrating purposes. Then I have to enter any of the username you want, then password. Then for the public inbound port and outbound port, this is used when you deploy the virtual machine on the cloud. But if you want to use on your own computer, then they will these the public inbound ports are used for them. So I wouldn't be using this on my computer right now. So I will choose none, and I will review and create them. It would take some time to for the deployment. So I would also be discussing what is happening on the backend part. So it is deploying, so I will be discussing about what is happening on the backend. So what you see was the Azure portal. Through Azure portal, you can access all of the services, but what is happening on the background is that the Azure portal is connected through the orchestrator. Here, orchestrator is the masterpiece that handles everything between the Azure data centers and the Azure portal. Through Azure APIs, you can connect with the orchestrator. As I have selected the type, the name, the storage, the size, the requirement for the network interface in the Azure portal, the API would provide this information to the orchestrator. The orchestrator would then send this information to the Azure data center. Here, the Fabric controller are the helper or the slave of the system that would be helping in transferring the data from orchestrator to the Azure data centers. Fabric controller checks if these requirements could be fulfilled by the data centers. In data center, there are many systems like network compute system. If the data center response is yes to the requirements provided by the user, then it would respond yes to the Fabric controller. Then Fabric controller would start creating that resource for you, that as I have created the virtual machine that has been deploying. So the Fabric controller starts creating the resource, and meanwhile sends the confirmation message to the orchestrator. Then orchestrator will be showing if any error is occurring, or if the deploying part is successfully occurring. Then it would be showing in the notification panel of the Azure portal. Then uh, then after the deployment part, in the choosing of the virtual machine, you have to select the region and geographies. There are many data center and region all over the world, and the Azure regions are organized into specific geographies like US, Asia, China, and Azure geography ensures the data residency, sovereignty, the compliance. The compliance is that the law the law in the different geography. Like in US, if you are deploying your services in US, you can't send data outside of that geography. There are some laws that you have to abide by. A region is within a geography. There are many regions within a geography. A region is a set of data center deployed within a latently defined parameter. So how you have to use the Azure region, how may you select that? So there are many Azure region, like in this diagram there is the Wi-Fi icon showing. If we are like in Pakistan or Bangladesh, we have to choose a region uh, uh, nearest to us. So there are some data centers in India. Unfortunately, there is no data center in Pakistan or Bangladesh, but we can choose the India. In India, if we choose India, we would have low latency and high bandwidth network with minimum delay. So, for example, if I deploy a data center in three regions, of Pakistan, like Islamabad, Lahore, and Karachi. So these data center would directly connect with the ISP in Pakistan. They connect it with low latency, as they are within short distance from us. So whoever connects and accesses the data center would get a high connectivity. So you can also choose the region in the US, but it would be more preferable that you choose the data center which is near um, to you. So if you deploy any virtual machine in US, that would have some pros and cons to it. So there would be high latency and higher delay. Like if you deploy a virtual machine and if you use any Word document, if you type a word, so the word would be appearing with some delay, as you have chosen the data center far away from your region. So you can select a region according to your own choice. So Azure has more global region and any other than any other cloud provider offering to scale needed to bring application closer to user. There are 60 plus regions worldwide in 140 available in 140 countries. So there comes the part to the availability zones. So what are availability zones? So if you deploy your virtual machine on any other service in a particular zone, there may be chance of the region by getting destroyed by any natural disaster. So what would happen at that time? Your all the services are deployed in that region, and you have to cope with that problem. So Microsoft Azure provide availability zone for that. If you deploy in a particular region, so there would be a option of choosing the availability zone for you. The availability zone would there would be availability zone like 1, 2, 3 in the on the selection in the Azure interface. So on selecting the Azure, your data would be safe in another availability zone 2 or availability zone 3. In case of your original server get destroyed, your data would be sync with that availability zone, and you can continue your services using that server. So there are if, for example, if you want to deploy a web server or application server, if you want your data to sync, in case the original server get down, you wouldn't get any delay, and you can continue to provide services to your customers. As there are two types of availability zone, there are zonal services and zonal redundant services. The zonal services are within a same zone. These are like the virtual machine which you can create in a given zone. You can configure your IP address or the SQL database within the zonal services. The zonal redundant services are you can deploy these services outside of your zone. These are like the SQL databases, like disaster recovery strategy. Data gets transferred from one physical location to another physical location. As I have discussed that there are some benefit like business continuity in case of any disaster, and there is 99.9% rate of SLA. So what is SLA? SLA is service level agreement that you have agreed with your customer. You would continue to provide your services. It is a contract between service provider and its customer that documents what services the provider is obligated to meet. So you don't need to worry about that. So then if you choose the availability zone, but there is some more risk to that. The region are very far away, but what if the whole all of the three availability region got destroyed? There is a very rare possibility, but if it occurs, Azure has also provided an option for that, that if the region that get destroyed, you would have a region pair far away from that region, like there would be a 300-mile distance between the original server and that server. But if the all availability zone get destroyed, you would have a region pair with your original server. So in the whole geography, if there are two geography, you can select a region from the another geography. A geography are very large, and what if the whole geography got destroyed, you can select another server from the region of another geography. So there are some benefits to that. That there is the business continuity, like if something happened to the region in which your services are deployed, then you can continue to provide services with your paired region. So, and there is isolation, as this is Microsoft ensured that the distance between the two regions should be 300 or more miles between them, so that if any of the natural disaster or any emergency occurs in that region, you can provide your services with a far away region in another geography. So there is another benefit of replication, like your data stored in your primary region would automatically be duplicated in secondary region, and then there is redundancy or recovery in case by any reason your storage is down or gets deleted, you can recover it with the help of the secondary region. So there is also option of update. So recently there is maintenance going on NUST LMS, so we couldn't use the services of LMS, but Microsoft Azure provide that if you update your original service, then you can provide your customer with those services using the secondary region. That is very beneficial so that your customer doesn't go away and continue your services. So there are some paid region, like if you have deployed your region, your server in a particular East Asia. If you choose an East Asia, you can choose the paid region in Southeast Asia, and there are many other you can see on this screen. Then there's come the part of availability sets. So you have deployed your server uh, on a particular region. So the availability set is the logical grouping of the deployed resources. Like if you deployed a rack service on one region, then there will be a availability region where your data would be synced. uh, like in this diagram, you have deployed your original rack server. So your in the other availability zone, there would be another rack where your data would be sync, and in both server, the whenever you update your web server, your data would be sending sync and gets on that web server too. Like on the databases, you can your data would be updated in the second availability set too. Or so there is two term in availability set related to the hardware and software. So if any hardware gets destroyed, that would become in the fault domain. In particular fault domain, like you can see it here, there are two fault domain in the one in the original server and one in the availability zone. So if any of the rack server get destroyed, you can use your services in the another rack server. But if you have to maintain or you have to update your software, then comes the part to the update domain. If software is patching on one server, like you are updating your services on one server, you the update domain would stop the sync between the two server, and you can use your old services with the web server too. So whenever you are finished updating the web server one, you can then update that server as well, and your customer wouldn't find any delay between the updating of the first server. So that's all about the deploying of virtual machine. Then this, if you want to deploy or create some app, there are many set of procedure you can use. Like there are many type of construction. Like there are microservices based app, the monolithic app, the event driven execution. Depending on your app, you can Microsoft Azure provide you with different services. Azure platform services are for that. Like for the web services, Azure app services is a set of services that has everything we need to build apps that target both web and mobile client from a single app backend. It supports a range of language option like .NET, Node.js, Java, PHP, and Python. Using this Azure App Services, you can create and deploy your web and mobile clients from a single app backend using any of the available languages. Then there's come the part for Microsoft Service based app. The Microsoft Service based apps are those apps that the apps are divided into components, and each component is deployed separately from the other components. So you can use the service fabric for that. Azure Service Fabric is a platform that developers can use to build and manage custom microservice based application at cloud scale with 24/7 availability. Microservices are an architecture approach based on finely grained, loosely coupled services that can enable advanced developer agility, cloud scale, self-healing, resilience, and always and availability. Service fabrics are foundation for many Microsoft services. Like you can use the services like Azure SQL database for storing the data, Azure document database, Cortana, Windows Intune, and Sky for business. Then if you want to create your app like in monolithic way, like monolithic apps are based on only one component, like you have to deploy only one component in opposite to the microservices where there are many components to the app. The Through cloud services you can also create and deploy monolithic apps. It was inspired by the need of developer. Cloud services enable the developer to easily deploy any application, taking advantage of cloud infrastructure like virtual machine without having to manage the low level details and configuration of Windows Server or underlying infrastructure. Then there are the event-driven execution. Like in an app, if a particular event occur, that would be the reason for many of the series of event to be occurring. For this type of app, you can use Azure Functions. Azure Function provides serverless compute for event-driven solution that extend the existing Azure application platform with capabilities to implement code triggered by events occurring in other Azure services, like SaaS products like Office 365 and Sales.com, that is based upon event-driven execution and on other premises system. With function, we only pay while our function is actually executing. It provides an intuitive browser-based user interface, allowing you to create, schedule, or trigger pieces of code implemented in a variety of programming languages. Uh, that's all from the Microsoft Azure part. You can also learn from the Microsoft about the Microsoft services through Microsoft Learn platform. Here's the link for that docs.microsoft.com/nus-learn. You can visit this website and learn about the other services Microsoft is providing. And that's all. Now I would be taking any question if you are asking. Hello, Asif.
Yes, I'm here. Okay, so
Okay.
we got another question. Uh, it's from Rizwanul Haq. He asked, is there any limit on these free Azure Learn programs? Like in GitHub Student Pack, there are many programs which are for 1 year after the activation.
Yeah. Limit to the Microsoft.
Azure Learn programs. Okay, so
Um,
I think he actually asked about the free Azure student account.
okay. So the Microsoft free account, they have provided us with $100 Microsoft credit. If you use all of the credit, then you would have to pay for the further services if you want to use. You have to upgrade for that. You have only provided with the $100 as your credit.
Okay, so that means after finishing that $100 free credit limit, he has to buy
Yeah.
for premium plans, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we got another question from Lutfar Rahman. Uh, the question is, if I and my friend want to work in a single project like team, then is there any way to do that project without paying individually in cloud services?
Um, if you can use a single account on Microsoft Azure, like if you can create a single virtual machine in developing the app, but you have to the with the inbound ports you can connect it with the same virtual machine with different desktops, so different people can use and create a single app using same virtual machine, so you can use that a
Okay,
single
so
CPU.
so I'm adding more with that. So you also get to control the accesses. So you can also share that with
Yeah,
your friends that who are working in that team. Am I right, Aman?
yeah,
Okay, so I hope that answers your question. So any more questions? All right, so I guess there are no more questions coming. So we should finish up this program. So before finishing, I would like to inform the present attendees one thing, that tonight within 6 hours we are going to email you a questionnaire. So there will be 5 to 6 questions depending on our today's event, the things you got to learn. So after you answer those questions correctly, you will get your certificate made to you in no time. So everyone clear about those things? Or any more questions? So if there is no more questions coming, so Ahmad, you can bring down the finishing part.
Okay. So we should end the meeting now.
Yes, we can start the ending.
Okay. I am stopping the recording.
Okay.